Hi, I'm Underbelly, and you suck at producing. By this point, everybody and their grandmother knows how to write a decent lo-fi hip-hop beat. You just sample some dead guy playing jazz chords and get anime girls to scream over it, and you've just earned yourself thousands of dollars in streaming revenue. Or so it was. But in today's oversaturated lo-fi marketplace, it's not enough to just put a kick and snare over vinyl crackle. That's why in today's lesson, I'll be sharing some of my favorite tips that I've learned writing my latest lo-fi song, Cloud Watching, made in collaboration with my good friend, Arbour. We'll be sharing our favorite instruments and effects for writing lo-fi, as well as some arrangement techniques you can use to turn your boring lo-fi beats into fully fleshed out songs. Let's get started. Okay, so check it. My first tip is to start your lo-fi tracks with instruments, not samples, as instruments will give you more flexibility in the long run to escape the 4-bar loop hellhole. So in this case, I'm starting with the Sweet Booty bass. Let's take a listen. And I'm using the E Instruments Studio Bass Pack from Ableton.com. This thing costs 100 smackers, but it's worth it. As you can see here, I have a bunch of deactivated notes. Let's go ahead and highlight them and reactivate by hitting 0. You'll notice that very low velocity notes create this sort of plucky sound. And if I go back to the instrument and turn up the low velocity articulation, oh, beautiful, crazy, delicious guitar harmonics that are surely going to pay for themselves in extra Spotify streaming revenue. Wowzers! My second tip is to use plugins to impart that lo-fi feel on your instruments. There's plenty of options out there: Sketch Cassette, Wolf Compressor, good old RC20. All nonsense. Why spend money on those when you can get a free plugin by going over to the Stray Cats collection, Audio Effects, and selecting Color? Oh wowzers, that's wobblier than Uncle Joe on his third whiskey. Let's turn down that pesky vinyl crackle and maybe lower the depth of the wobble. And maybe just bring up the, bring up that booty bass a little bit with the EQ. Turn this thing on and off. Okay, wowzers, coming straight off of vinyl right there. That's beautiful. But there's plenty of plugins out there that already have that lo-fi character built in. For example, one of my favorites is Spitfire Labs, which is a free plugin you can download. And one of my favorite packs here is the Tape Orchestra pack. Very lo-fi, sounds amazing. Let's hear it. Oh, wowzers. Solo that out. It's already got that flutter, that vinyl crackle. I'm falling asleep to this just by listening. And if you really want to bring out the character, you can always just go to your audio effects, go to multiband and slap an OTT on there. Oh Jesus, that's dustier than Uncle Joe's AA handbook. Let's turn down the amount here and here with our booty bass. Oh, that's amazing. Okay, wowzers. Okay, I think this is a great start to our lo-fi beat, but let's go ahead and add some drums to this. And most lo-fi producers, they stick to just the good old kick and snare. So let's start with that. Take a listen. Okay, that's nice. But my third tip here is to add more variation in your drums. That's really what's going to sustain the whole track here. So even with just the kick and snare, we can make it more interesting by just going over to our snare, clicking on it, and holding down Option on Mac or possibly Control on Windows and dragging it to a new slot in the drum rack. So now I have an exact copy of this snare sample. I'm going to go ahead and call this, snare verb. And we're going to add some reverb to this one. I'm going to go back to my audio effects, check out that hybrid reverb, turn the dry wet to 100%, so this is just going to be pure reverb on this snare. Okay, beautiful. Let's go back to the hybrid reverb. I'm going to turn the blend all the way to the left so we just get the convolution reverb here. And I'm going to pick something more interesting here. I'm going to pick Springs because that's the only season that Uncle Joe lets Derek out to play outside. Let's take a listen. Oh, that's beautiful. And now what we can do is go to the clip here and just layer on that reverb only on certain snares. So maybe every other snare. I don't know. Let's try it. Okay, so we got dry and then spring. Oh, that's amazing. Wowzers. So even just that makes our lo-fi drums a lot more interesting. Maybe let's add some hi-hats. I'm gonna start with the closed hi-hat. Just put that right there. Okay. Let's make our closed hi-hats a little bit more interesting by, I don't know, randomly fucking with the velocity down here. Duplicating that all the way through. And maybe just taking all of them and nudging them ever so slightly to the right. Everybody listening to lo-fi is always late because they're always asleep. It's so relaxing. And maybe add some open hi-hats somewhere in there. Okay. All right, so we already got some variation with our drums here, but another technique I like to use is layering acoustic drum sounds on top of the electronic ones we already have. So let me scroll down a little bit. I got this 32 pad kit jazz, kind of like the jazz musicians that used to be alive before they all got replaced by lo-fi producers. Let's take a listen to how it sounds. Okay, it was beautiful. But I want to apply some effects here so that it melds a little bit better with our electronic drums. So I'm going to go to my audio effects. I'm going to select auto pan and pick the tremolo preset right over here. Okay, so we got that wobble coming in and out. Let's turn the amount up and make the rate a bit faster. And I'm going to change the shape to a sawtooth so we get that chop. And now just to really bring out the noise here, I'm going to add OTT to this again. Okay, wowzers. Turn down that low end. Maybe turn the amount all the way down to like 50% or so. Let's hear that with my kick and snare. Oh, wowzers. So much more texture. And of course we can add more acoustic sounds to that. We could add this ride. Oh, it's amazing. And now just to glue all this stuff together, let's go ahead and group all these drums. And I'm going to, I don't know, copy that same color effect over to the drum group. Take a listen. Oh, it sounds a bit distorted. Let's turn out that low end a bit. And maybe add some glue compression just to glue it all together. You'll notice that I'm going to turn the attack all the way up to let the transient of the kick and snare through and the release all the way down so that the compressor recovers and goes back to 0 as soon as the kick and snare have passed. Let's lower that threshold. Holy shit, you might notice that it's fucking neutering my kicks, turning them all the way down. So I'm going to click the arrow on the upper left and click on EQ so that it doesn't pay attention to the low end as much. Sort of like how we didn't pay attention to Derek for a very long time and caused developmental problems. Anyways, let's turn the makeup up, turn on the soft clicks to get that sort of distortion effect. And if it's too loud, no problem, you can just turn down the group here. Oh, beautiful. Okay, now let's hear our drums with the effects on and off. I'm going to highlight both, hit 0 to turn them off, and back on. Beautiful. See that in the mix. Oh, wowzers. And now that we've added so much more character and variation to our drums, we can add or subtract these different layers for different sections of our song and create these distinct energy changes. For example, oh, wowzers. Look at all these extra drum layers, so beautiful. Okay. Now, even with all the drum programming and variation in the world, there's only so much we can extract from this main musical idea here. So at a certain point, you're going to need to write a B section over here. And I know that's scary, but one way we can do it is by going back to our initial idea and figuring out what key it's in. So let me go back to my booty bass here. And let's pay attention to the notes at the bottom. I'm going to hit fold here just so we can see them all good, nice and big. You can see the notes here are G sharp, D sharp, and F. So what I'm going to do is click scale here, and I'm going to, I don't know, let's start with G sharp. So I'm going to select G sharp over here and see if it's all in the G sharp major scale. You notice I have it folded here so I can see all the notes and see whether or not they're in the scale by checking if they're highlighted over on the left side. Now you might notice that this particular note, D, is not in the scale, okay? So I guess my first initial idea is not in the key of G sharp. Well, my next note is D sharp, so let me try that. I want to change the scale over to D sharp, and wowzers, every single note I'm playing here fits in the scale and must be in the key of D sharp major. That's amazing. Okay, so now that we're at my handy dandy keyboard, let's write a new chord progression in the key of D sharp major. So let's find out what chords are even available to me in this scale. So here's the scale. And if I build triads off of every note, I get this. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Okay, so I think it's a little too spicy to start out with that diminished. Yikes. But maybe minor could add some extra flavor. Let's try, I don't know, G minor. And then let's move it up to a chord that we had in the A section to reference back. So maybe we'll do G minor to G sharp major. That was the first chord of the A section. Maybe make the voicings a little spicier. Oh, beautiful. Add some twinkly dinks on top. All right, I think we have the makings of a B section, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit record. Oh, okay, here we go. New chord, F, C sharp dominant, get that spice. To really bring it back to that A section. My last tip is to add live instruments to the track to give it that extra flavor. And for that, I'm going to defer to my good friend Arbour, who'll tell us how he wrote the guitar parts for the song.
My name's Arbour, and I did this song with Underbelly, and I'm going to walk you through how I did some of the guitars in this track. This blue group here is the guitars. I have all the guitars running through an EQ and an OTT compressor. Let's start on Arp Thing. Sounds like this. It's made up of two guitars, and it's double tracked. So we have guitar left, and then I played it again and panned it to the right. And they are the same signal chain. I'm using Stark, which is a great guitar plugin. I've got Hybrid Reverb, which is just adding a little bit of space to it. I have it going through a vibrato, and then Sketch Cassette, which is emulating a cassette, and then Simple EQ. So that's Arp Thing. Then I add the chords to it, which is the same signal chain. After that, I add something that I'm calling a wail, kind of a response to the chords, so you can hear how they play off of each other like this. Chord hit, chord hit. I've got a super reverby signal on the left and a dry signal on the right. It's just the DI signal. When you pan that really hard, it sounds really nice. The last guitar element here is the melody, which is the most noticeable sound of the guitar tracks. And that sounds like this. So when you take this one, you can hear it sounds very artificially high, and that's because I pitched it up using the Complex Pro Warp. When you turn the formants in the envelope all the way down, it sounds really tinny, and I like that sound. The melody is just the original pitch of it. I guess they're both called melody, but here's the high one. So that's the guitars in the beginning. I'll play them all together real quick so you can just hear it in context. So there's one last guitar section in the end where a new element comes in. It's called high guitar and also high guitar. So you can hear it's this high sounding, almost string-like element, and It's a real simple signal chain, just got amp and cabinet, basically on default settings. And then I'm going into Megaverb with this little distortion section up pretty high. And the wetness is all the way up. And this eventually just fades into a higher melody here, where they harmonize for just a second. Here it is in context again.
Wowzers! Thanks, Arbour, and thank you, the viewer, for watching. You can check out our full song, Cloud Watching, by clicking in the link in the video description. I'm Underbelly. Have a great day.